Hey everyone, Selwyn here for WynnStrength. On today's video, I wanted to talk about knee travel or knee bend during a squat. Does it matter? Should you do it? How should your knees travel when you squat? Long story short, it doesn't matter if your knees travel over your toes. I know there's been a lot of talk in the past, or you might have heard that you shouldn't ever let your knees travel forward past your toes when you're performing a squat. Simply not true, just because there's no data that suggests that causes any long-term damage whatsoever. So I would throw that out the window, don't worry about it. The most important part is that the angle that your knees bend follows your toes. And that's just because we're starting to twist knees in certain ways, and you probably don't want to be twisting your knee joint while bending under load, just because when if you've ever eaten like a whole chicken, you know how to take that drumstick off, you twist it and you bend, and it tears that ligament. A lot of ACL injuries happen on sports field where there's a twist and a dynamic movement the other way. So we want to minimize any twisting forces on that knee joint, especially under load. But those kind of lateral movements, or the front and back movements, don't really stress it that much, because what it comes down to is we're experiencing the same load, we're just distributing that between the hips and the knee joint and the ankle joint. And when we let that knee travel more forward, even past the toes, we're just activating more quads because the knee's having to bend more. And when we don't let that knee travel past the toes, we're just going to be activating a bit more hips and glutes. So that's really the only thing that you should be thinking about when you're thinking about how far forward your knee should travel. And it's less so of how far forward should your knee travel, rather it's just a byproduct of how you set up your squat. So if you look at a front squat, for example, the weight's at the front, our back is going to be super upright so we don't tip forward. And because our back is super upright, our hips can't bend back, obviously. So in order for us to squat down, something has to give, so that angle comes in mainly from the knees and a little bit from the ankle joint. So our knees are going to travel super far forward. Look at a lot of the Olympic weightlifters, how far forward their knees bend. I'm not aware of any knees blowing out on an Olympic weightlifting stage, so there's that. And then conversely, on the total flip side of that, we have geared powerlifters when they squat. You'll see them to take advantage of the suit dynamics and all the mechanical advantages there. They're sitting super far back in the squat. We have a really wide stance, and the shins stay almost vertical, and then they sit all the way down into that squat suit and then stand back up. So they're experiencing very little knee flexion relative to their hips, where the hips are taking a lot of that stress and power. That's where that's coming out of. So again, there's not really any cons to letting your knees travel forward past your knees, as long as it's within the movement pattern of the squat you're choosing to do. So we take that super accentuated knee travel in a front squat, and then we show on the complete other side is a low bar back squat where we have a super wide stance and our hips are taking most of that stress. So we want to, depending on how you squat, it's going to kind of shoot in the middle of the road there. Again, the biggest point is make sure that your knees bend in the direction of where your toes are facing. You don't want those knees to come in. There's going to be a huge tendency for that, just because the muscles in the hips really want to pull those knees in when we exert force. So you really want to focus on that ascent when you start standing up out of the hole. Drive those knees out, slide the feet out with your floor, open your taint. Whatever cue works for you to make sure that your knees stay out rather than start caving in when you stand up. Again, that's just mainly for knee health, but also more importantly, an efficient squat pattern. When those knees start caving in, we're losing some of that energy to the knees traveling in rather than staying out. So all that to say is simply, when you're looking at how you want to squat, the more your knee travels, the more your knee bends, the more focus is going to be on those quadriceps activating. It's because they're having to bend more and exert more force. And the less your knee bends, subsequently, the more your hips are going to bend, which means that you're going to be working on more of those hip muscle activations, so like glutes, the hips themselves, hamstrings to a degree. And it's also going to be dependent on your back angle. So when our back is more upright, our knees are going to bend more forward. When our back is more horizontal, our knees are going to be more upright. I can't really think of a way that wouldn't be the case, just because of how things bend, unless you break a leg. But yeah, hopefully that helps. with your squat. This has been Selwyn from WynnStrength, and remember, a better life through strength.